We should naturally have the energy we need in order to live.
It's not part of us, then it's just another program. Wow.
We don't need to listen to everything.
Hey, welcome to the Strength Connection podcast. I'm your host, Michael Kurkowski. Thank you so much for joining me today. So Avital Miller is a worldly known speaker. She's a yoga instructor, healing practitioner, and she's the author of the #1 best-selling book on Amazon, Healing Happens. So first off, the energy Avital brings to a conversation is insane. She's actually known in her circle as the Energizer Bunny, but her work in energy healing and the power of the body to heal itself, it's fascinating, and she's so on point in this conversation. So in this episode, she dove into her story of going from working at Microsoft to a trip that changed her life and how she ultimately healed herself from an autoimmune disease that the doctors told her she would have to medicate for the rest of her life. As well as she also put me through some specific practices to recharge the body and unlock the energy within us. This was a truly beautiful conversation. I know you'll get a lot out of Avital's message. So I appreciate you spending some time with me here. And if you enjoy this episode, hope you could take a moment, give it a review wherever you're listening to, and please share it with a friend. Help to spread the message of strength for me. Awesome. All right. Thank you so much. Now let's get on with the show. Welcome back to the show, everybody. Avital, how are you today? Thank you so much for joining me. I'm really excited for this.
I am fabulous. Thank you so much for having me on your show. And I'm just delighted to meet you and see your wonderful energy.
Yeah, no, same. I was saying, a lot of the work that I researched on you with your books and everything you talk about is about increasing energy. And the first thing I thought is like, wow, this woman's energy is so infectious. This is going to be an absolute blast. So Yay. Right off the bat, I'm already excited right off the bat. So thank you.
Thank you for saying that. That's so nice.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, no, I'm excited to chat with you. The couple books that you have out, Healing Happens, as well as Practice, got a chance to, connect with. I've seen a lot of the work that you did specifically with connecting the physical side of strength really with the spiritual practices as well. I think it's such an important thing for people to talk about because it's not something I think people openly discuss as much, but everybody's very curious about, specifically for their own individual healing and stuff. So I think we're going to dive into quite a few different topics here and let it roll. But to begin with, I would love to hear a little bit more kind of about your origin of getting into this world, because you started you were a program manager at Microsoft before you came into this world, which is energy-wise seems very on the opposite end of the spectrum of the work that you're doing now. So kind of how did this transition occur for you?
Yeah. I love when you first asked though, like, I want to know how you got into this world. I was like, well, I came out of my mother's womb. Yeah. I came out so fast that if the doctor didn't catch me, I would have flown across the hospital room. So if you want to talk about having energy, that is where it first began. And I actually believed as a kid that if we need coffee in order to feel energetic, then actually what we need to do is change something in our lives to live a little bit more natural state. Like we should naturally have the energy we need in order to live. And I'm saying this because I grew up with a lot of the Jewish faith, but my favorite class was rabbinics, where you study the laws. And to me, that meant morals, how to be a good person. And I'm learning this in grade school. And so I just grew up at a young age with just really thinking about how you can be a good person in the world and your physical fitness. Cause then I grew up with gymnastics and dance as well. And so I was already naturally taking care of my body. So there is this groundwork there. And I do remember the dancers in my yoga studio coming in and saying that sometimes they were so poor, all they could eat was rice and beans. I'm thinking, well, gosh, you think about, what do I want to be when I grow up? I was like, well, I don't want to be poor. So I don't want to be a dancer. I'll just dance for fun. And my father's whole side of the family are engineers. I was great at math and science. And anyways, my family really valued getting good grades, getting a great job, having a dependable career. I wanted to study psychology in college. And my mother suggested, well, you're going to get better grades because I was better academically, at engineering, but you're more likely going to get a dependable career with a higher paying career.
Right.
And at that age, I was like, oh, okay. I mean, that makes sense. Those sound like good reasons.
Yep.
So I went with it. And I even did internships and co-ops during college to get that real world experience. But there's something different when you're dipping your toe in the water than when you're diving in the water. And I dove in the water when I was a program manager at Microsoft. And I'm looking around me going, oh, I have different values than the people around me. And I'm really not liking this and feeling like I'm affecting the world in the way that I want to. So those things were just ringing on my shoulders, and I couldn't figure out what else to do because I was raised with a certain way of thinking.
Sure.
And I didn't know how, just while I was there, to break that mold. And I went on a 2-week backpacking trip in Chile and went, oh, well, if I actually traveled for 6 months to 12 months in a country like this, and I can speak the language, then I'm going to immerse myself in the culture, and then I'm going to understand people better. So I'm going back to I want to understand people better. So I got my psychology degree through studying. Through traveling, and then through studying every single astrology, human design, Enneagram, personal development program that I could get my hands on. And then, of course, through the experiences that I gathered. But yes, I travel around the world. It shifted my perspective about what life needs to be. And really, one thing leads into the next from there. So then I'm practicing yoga and Pilates at that time. This is over 20 years ago, but it's a little secret about my age. But this is about 20 years ago. And people are approaching me to teach them, because at that time, people knew about it, but not everyone was doing it. So they were curious. And it was a great time to be a newer yoga instructor and kind of help lead the way into this new field. And I decided, okay, I'm a yoga instructor. So I got all the training for yoga, and I did the fitness too, because I've always been into fitness. And then very quickly, I became a teacher trainer and a fitness director. So I just went into management, and I started my own business with it too. And it was great. And I started having health issues. Then I got fascinated because I started healing beyond what was expected from those health issues. So I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder called Hashimoto's, as well as hypothyroidism, and just put on tons of medication. But that's it for life, head on out the door. And I started to meditate more regularly. I did a lot of things. I mean, I read books. I studied with an Ayurvedic doctor in India, one-on-one for 2 months. I went to all these different practitioners. So I was learning so much and trying all these things, and kind of leveled me out. But when I started meditating regularly, then it was like I went from medication to meditation, and they just started lowering my medication. So that's where the story comes in. I'm like, oh my God, this is a miracle. The doctors didn't say this was possible, but this is what happened. And do you know this, Michael, when you're going shopping for a new car, and let's say it's a red Ferrari, since I'm wearing this red scarf, and all you see everywhere are red Ferraris.
That's it. Yep. It's in the brain.
The reticular activating system. So you start to notice more and more of what you're thinking about. So now I'm meeting people who are telling the story of being given a terminal diagnosis of a few months or a few hours, but I'm meeting them years later. Oh, this isn't just my story. And I was just going to be uncomfortable. I wasn't going to be dead. For a while, I thought I might be dead because I was getting worse without having an understanding as to what it was. But I never was really going to die from what was going on. So now I'm okay. I got to interview all of these different health and healing experts and understand a little bit more about this and let people of the world know. So we get to my book, Healing Happens, Stories of Healing Against All Odds.
It's a fascinating thing. I want to bring it back to a couple things that you said there, Avital, where one is when you went into the work with Microsoft, as you said, instead of dipping your toe in the water, dive deep into it. A lot of times we think of that of something that we're really passionate about, dive 100% into it because this is what I really want to do. But also at the same, you're kind of saying, if you're not sure about if this is what you want to do or not, it's still good to dive completely into it and find that answer. I thought that was so fascinating. And it seems so logical. I'm good at this. I'm good at this. Well, obviously this is what I want to do. I don't want to be poor. I want to have a nice life. And go into, and how many times we do this. I grew up in a similar, place, a suburban area where that was what you did. I was kind of the weird one that didn't go to college right away after, after school from my high school. And then when you went for this like 2-week backpack in Chile, was there a thought in your head of like, I'm going here in search of something, or was it just more of like a vacation that you were gone on and then these revelations kind of came about?
Do you want to know the secret?
Yeah.
I've never told this on air. I was having a lot of stress from being at Microsoft. You have stress when you're not doing what's right for you. So I went to the doctor and I said, I need a leave of absence. And he said, okay.
Wow. Okay.
And there were all these signs of, what was going on. And maybe that's what led to my health issue, a little bit down the road. And so it was good to at least start gaining perspective. And so I just knew during that time, like, I need to figure out like what to do differently. But I remember, this is case in point, like somebody ran into me probably a month after I was on the leave and he goes, oh my God, you look like 10 years younger. So the stress was real, but I started interviewing for other jobs. And I will tell you this is what's fascinating about how life designs everything perfectly in a way. But when I interviewed at Microsoft, I actually already had a wonderful job. And so I wasn't necessarily looking for the job at Microsoft, but I was like, this is Microsoft and I get a trip to Seattle to go interview. So I'm not necessarily trying to prove myself. I'm just having fun with this. Another thing, sometimes just having fun, not proving yourself goes a long way. And they offered me like way more than my other job, way more than other starting people. So, so I went and I go work there. 9/11 happened. So post 9/11, there aren't as many jobs. You need to prove yourself a little bit more, right? A lot of people just decided they're going to further their education instead of looking for a job at that time. Because that was easier than getting a job. And so I'm going to these interviews. And have you ever gone to a potluck where nobody brings anything? Generally not, because
pretty much not. Yeah. Usually that's the only job that you have. Yeah.
But that's kind of like what it was. Nobody, they were waiting for me to prove to myself. I'm waiting for them to prove to themselves, because that's the mode that I had with Microsoft. Right. And nobody's getting anywhere in these conversations. Right. Okay. And the gentleman I was dating at the time, he came late one night to help me at my job at Microsoft, because they gave me like I had to do SQL server. Anyways, it's this back end technology stuff. And I didn't know anything about it beforehand, but my job had also changed to be a little more functional back end versus the creative. I was working on MSN, like I was working on the first social media platforms out there. So I was actually integrating like the customer side, but that's another thing. Wow. The role changed because they didn't know how to financially support it yet. So they had to move things around. So he's there helping me and he's like, doesn't look like you really want to do this. And I never thought, oh, do I want to do this? It's like, oh, I don't. Yeah. I don't. So I'm interviewing, it's not going anywhere. And then I was like, okay, well, I'll just, take a vacation while I have this time off. Cause it was the last segment of time before I had to go back to work. So let me at least just do something fun. Right. Yeah. Well, it's so great that you realize that. So many people, and by people, I mean, I've been there personally myself, of you just keep just putting the mask on and just everything's fine. And then you just go in and you be like, it will get better. I'm working at this amazing place. I'm doing all this awesome stuff. This has to be the right thing for me. And sometimes we force that, especially when we're younger too, because energy is just super up. It's the first time that we're kind of exploring our own identity in that. And then that just realization of, this is not where I'm supposed to be. It's a weird like realization for a lot of people, I think. And I think it's a scary thing, because you kind of can't hide from that truth when it's yourself. I had that with my old job when I was in a super stressful spot. I was doing phenomenal, like on paper, everything was going great. And then I remember someone just
very, you know, when somebody is very authentic with what they ask you, not just like, hey, you doing good? You know, this person's like, you doing okay? And I'm like, I really had to look. I was like, no, I'm not doing okay. I need to change something up. And then immediately things changed over. So it's amazing when you just get those little spots in the universe that tell you, like, it's telling you something, you better go with it. And that brought you all the way to Chile and in new work there. So when you're in this world now of like, okay, now you're doing great, you're feeling great in fitness, you're doing all your yoga, and then all of a sudden the ailments start to come up with this. And then was this a long trek of you seeing kind of some health issues going on, or did things kind of come all at one time?
No, it was pretty sudden. I mean, honestly, like I've been nicknamed the Energizer Bunny. I'm back to that status, but so it wasn't anything I realized. And I'll tell you, I remember in preschool, do you remember the little cots that they pull out and you nap time? And I didn't nap, but I was a good kid. So just laid there quietly waiting.
Yeah.
So this is why I remember nap time. You shouldn't remember nap time. You should have been napping. I remember it. Yeah, I was a kid every night, Mom, I can't sleep.
Yeah.
But here's the deal. So I went on a trip to Switzerland and then to Israel. My sister was living in Israel. She was getting married. It's like, okay, well, I want to, combine this with something else exciting. I'm a traveler. So I go to Switzerland and I'm eating bread and chocolate every day. And I'm hiking at Zermatt, the Matterhorn, most beautiful spots in the world. And all of a sudden I collapse and my knee gave out and I had to take the tram back down. So lucky I didn't have to hike down.
Wow.
And then I went to Israel and I was napping on the couch. This was a tragedy for me. Now, not for everyone, but you can think of like something in your life that's ever happened that didn't feel like it was in your control, that felt embarrassing. I was just so glad my family didn't make fun of me or make me feel bad that I was napping, because here I am in my mid-20s, the Energizer Bunny, and I'm napping the whole time outside of the family events. So the fatigue was happening, and then it dwindled down from there because I still didn't think that much of it, but there were just a series of things that started to happen from there. So eventually I was teaching a cycling class. My face turned flush white and my students said, you need to go to the hospital.
Wow.
So
you get diagnosed Hashimoto's and they give you these pills and say, okay, this is your life now for the rest of time from here. So in that thought, were you like, okay, this is what I need to do? Or immediately were you like, no, there's got to be something like more to this? Because you were already doing a lot of practices, like you were doing yoga. I'm sure you were probably doing some meditative type practices before. Did your intention or did your practices change after that diagnosis, which you felt led to kind of this revelation of your new thought of healing?
Yeah. So the first thing was I always believed doctors. So I was like, oh, okay, this is the fact here. But, so I'm stuck with this for the rest of my life, kind of like an arranged marriage. Okay. But I really see myself impacting a lot of lives. I don't know exactly how or what, but I really see that. So let me just figure out the best way to live with this. Another success strategy, like flow with what is happening. Or try to push against it or resist it. And that's when I start reading. So I didn't necessarily think I was doing anything wrong, or missing anything in my practice, but I start studying and I was like, oh, like actually the food pyramid, that's not really like all that grain. That's not really the best diet for people. And here's why. Oh my gosh, all the products I'm using to clean my home. Like these are actually some of the research on this. Like, oh, that study on milk was funded by the people who profit off of milk. Like,
Start to see a little more awareness of everything that's going on around you.
And we go deeper and they're like, thyroid, throat, throat chakra, communication. Like, I'm teaching 25 to 30 classes a week. I'm running a staff of 100 people. Like, how could I have any communication issues?
Right.
And then I read further, they're like, yeah, well, you tend to be in relationships that aren't really serving you, and you're not really expressing how you feel and what you want. And
Oh, okay.
I was like, okay, well, I'm going to break up with the guy I'm dating. I'm going to start teaching myself like to communicate. But I actually, again, there's so many layers to ourselves and to understanding ourselves. So I had to, and this has been a long process over the last 20 years, to go through these layers of understanding myself. And then what I say, sing your sweet song. It's sweeter when you are fully attuned to what it is and accepting of it.
Right. Yeah. So with healing happen, I mean, I'm picking up everything of what you're laying down here, Avital. It brings me, there was a gentleman that I worked for a while, Dr. Lynette, who was in hypnosis, and just super interesting guy. He lived to like 98 years old, and his whole thing was just about stress and about alleviating stress, and everything is a stressor on your life. And as a 25-year-old kid, it went right over my head of what he was talking about. I realize it more and more now. Yeah. But when you go into like your book, Healing Happens, and I think it's, something, especially everybody who's probably listening to this podcast understands, like the body is, and the brain, it's a weapon for fighting against these diseases. But I think we get really confused maybe, or just not know how to actually put that into practice from there. So is there like specific practices that you lay out in Healing Happens to kind of like, this is what you should be focusing on for specific things?
Yeah. And so Healing Happens has 17 interviews with different types of health and healing experts, and all different types of paths of healing, all different types of diseases mentioned. But the key is that I looked at what is in common among a lot of these stories, so that we're looking at the bigger picture of how to heal, no matter which path of healing you choose. So I want to say there's both East and West types of medicine. So those of you who are I just want the normal, like allopathic, I want to do what my doctor says, that's fine. You can do all this in conjunction with whatever path of healing that you're choosing. And it does go a little bit more into the mind. When I started to speak about healing, I was actually using another book written by my yoga guru, Paramahansa Yogananda, because it actually mirrored on, like mind, body, spirit, right? The types of things that I was doing, the types of actions that I was doing. But what it didn't talk about was how to get the mindset to encourage yourself to make those changes happen. So what I created are the full-bodied success mastery strategies. And there's 4 key ones that I like to share with people from the book.
Okay. Do you mind jumping into those a little bit? Because that would be awesome. I love what you just said there, though, of the in conjunction of where you're going. And I think that's where a lot of people get misinformation, or there's a lot of people out there who get a little bit of like, they're a little bit of a zealot towards one versus another, of like, no, this is the only way versus it's like, no, there's probably a way that you can do it in both. It seems like you really looked at the principles behind, okay, what are the commonalities that we can do regardless of what approach in medicine that you want to pursue?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Dr. Bernie Siegel, a regular Western medicine doctor, he focused a lot on cancer. And he would very frequently have to tell people that they are terminal. But he would notice that the people who were focusing on their reason to live were the ones who were magically surviving and healing.
Yeah.
He had this landscaper who he said, you have to get a surgery. And he's like, oh no, but it's springtime. Like, don't you know, I have to go make the world beautiful. Like, can I come back and do this later? He's like, I guess so. So he comes back a little while later and they do the surgery. And then Dr. Bernie Siegel says to him, we didn't quite get everything. We got to do another surgery. And he says, no, but it's still springtime. I have to go make the world beautiful. Dr. Bernie's like, well, you're going to die. He's like, it's okay. I'll die making the world beautiful.
Wow.
This man comes back a few years later. The nurse calls into Bernie. He's like, okay, John Doe, whatever his name, right? Like, John Doe's here. And he goes, no, you must have the wrong file, or there's two of them because that guy died.
Yeah.
Like, he didn't come back for his surgery. The nurse is like, no, like, this really is him. Like,
yeah. Yeah.
Like,
no, that's so crazy. And I've saw that before, and I thought that was kind of like an odd thing. And then I said, there is actually real research behind the people who are survivors of terminal illness, specifically in cancer. One of the big reasons behind that is a belief that could be in God, that could be just a reason to live, the universe, whatever it is. And that was so powerful. And I saw that, I was like, yeah, I can totally understand that. It comes back into the framework of where you're at in your mindset, And I mean, this can go in so many different avenues. If you want to pursue a goal in business, or you have a strength goal that you have in like fitness, everything comes back to that self-efficacy, that belief that you have that you can do it. And a lot of that comes from a higher power first and aligning, with that. So now going into these full body success strategies, because I do want to get into these, could you share a bit of these 4 with us and how you utilize these?
Yeah. So the first one, you have to do this with me though, because
sure.
they all have motions with them. So you put your hands on your heart, you're going to reach your arms forward and open, and at the same time say reason to live.
So reason to
live. Yep. Reason to live. It's a vast, wide open opportunity. So I just told you about the landscaper. You were talking about this, and it doesn't matter if it's like, okay, I want to watch my kids grow up. I want to see my grandkid walk down the aisle. I know Dr. Bernie convinced this one lady, she's like, you have to stay alive to take care of your 9 cats. One of my other favorite ones was somebody who stayed alive to finish watching a soap opera series.
Hey, we all have our reasons. Yeah. Because The Bold and the Beautiful is probably going for another 20 years. So.
Yeah, right.
Oh God, that's definitely mean. I'm sorry about that. I was great. So,
it'll keep you alive.
Okay.
Today it's Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon.
Yeah. So the physical practice of it, that's a big piece of it. Is that just to kind of align your body with your mind?
There's 2 sides of this. So one, because I'm a trained educator, and we are going to pay attention and retain information more if we do movements with it. But I am also, I've got through some training for dance movement therapy. And of course I've done so much with yoga and spirituality and healing and energy healing. So yes, we are looking at like taking this energy from your heart and spreading it open into this vast potential opportunity of what life can be.
Yes.
That's what I like to do in my online course or longer workshops is just take people through a series of exercises to make sure we're really being realistic about who we're supposed to be, what we're supposed to be doing, right? We don't have those aha moments after you're deep into this, amazing job and you're like, oh, this isn't for me. Like I did at Microsoft.
Yeah.
And so that's the first piece. And do you ever notice this, Michael, when you have a newer idea and you start telling people, and there might be some people excited, a lot of people are going to start getting into, well, you're going to have to take care of this, and this is going to be a challenge, and you don't have the skills, and it's never been done, and these people tried it and it didn't work. And you have both. You have the ones that see the optimism or the ones that see the obstacles, right? At all times. The obstacles. I know. So what you're going to do is put one hand on your hip. I want some attitude.
Okay.
One arm forward, and you're going to shake your finger, and you're going to shake your head, and you're going to say, don't listen to everything.
I love that. I'm just interested and already just more energized from just doing this, because it's just it's just awesome. It's great.
Yeah. That's the secret behind it.
Yeah.
Is that when you do this dance, 1, you get energized, 2, you retain information, 3, you get to audition for my dance company.
I love it. Yeah.
You just have to learn these 4 moves and then you are set.
Okay.
But yeah, don't listen to everything. So when I think about this, first of all, from my book, I like to think of Maureen Belle's story. And she was into, natural health, green design. She loved plants and animals. Maybe you love plants and animals as well. And she was type A personality. So she's going and going, and she starts brushing her shoulders with cancer. She keeps going and going. She's in a wheelchair. She keeps going and going. She passed out. They took her to the hospital. They said, you have stage 4 or stage 3 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. You have 4 to 6 weeks to live. She's going, okay, I guess I'm dying. So her sister takes her home to die. 2 months later, just as the doctors predicted, she's in hospice care, 85 pounds, unable to get up or eat, on morphine patches, oxygen tubes. And her son comes to visit to say his final goodbye. But he has this double take moment. He goes, you were a strong single mom who raised me, who believes in natural healing techniques. Why didn't you fight this? Why didn't you fight? She's like, do I have a choice? She went into what some people might call a near-death experience. Maybe other people will call it a dream. We can call it what we want. But she felt herself separate from her body and kept hearing that word, choice. And asked her body, like, okay, well, do you want to do this? Do you want to go back and be alive? And the body's like, yeah, let's do it. Yeah. But she saw her mission. She saw her reason to live. Yeah. She saw the potential she could do to help other people heal. And she wakes up from that for the first time, right, in months, not feeling pain in her body and feeling hungry. She had one more round of chemo scheduled. So the story goes even more, to don't listen to everything. She has one more round of chemo scheduled, and her intuition's like, I don't need this. But then her intuition says, go ahead and do it. But look into what is in the chemo drugs. So they like prop her up on the bed, set a laptop on her, and she's looking this up. And she's like, oh, look at this. This first one is called vincastrine. It's made from the vinca plant. That's periwinkle. That's my favorite plant that I plant everywhere as an adult. Now she's going into chemo, loving what is going into her body. When normally it would take 3 to 4 hours to get everything into her system. Or sorry, when normally it would take 9 to 10 hours, now it's taking 3 hours. Normally her urine would turn blood red. This time it stayed its normal color. The nurses called the doctor and they said, are you giving her a placebo? Her hair is growing back in, she's gaining weight. And the doctor said, no way, not in her condition. She has continued to heal. She actually came and visited me at when I lived on the Oregon coast. She came and visited me there because she lived in Oregon, and took a walk on the beach, like fully healthy woman over a decade later. Wow. We don't need to listen to everything. And let's also think about famous people who we know. Yeah. Oprah Winfrey, Steven Spielberg, Michael Jordan, Albert Einstein, Lady Gaga. They've all been told at some point they didn't have what it takes in their field. Thank goodness for us, they didn't listen, because look at what they created. Right. Imagine where we all start from and what we can create. Because I want to say this, my book, Healing Happens. We're like, okay, so I have the skills in math and science, so I shouldn't do the psychology. I'm not as good with the writing. I was held back in school for my writing abilities. When we had the equivalency exams growing up, I would get 99%, which was the highest you could get in math. I would get 55% in English and grammar. So everyone told me I couldn't write. Yeah. This book hit bestseller on Amazon before launching and won 4 awards. So don't let thinking that you don't have the skills stop you. Yeah.
It's so interesting, Avital, hearing that story of Maureen. It's hard to fully fathom it. It's like, we've heard the stories of Michael Jordan and Oprah Winfrey, and it's like and I totally agree. Like, thank God that they did not listen to that and they overcame that. And we think of that as just this sheer grit, this sheer determination. But you also know in those people as well, they probably at some point were like, well, maybe they're right. I don't know. And probably started to understand it a little bit more. And what I got so much from your story is not just like blindly following just a path, actually understanding it one layer deeper. And as she looked at like the first drug there and then made that association with periwinkle, which was something that she could align with, now it's almost like, oh, this is actually meant for me. Now you're aligning yourself with what it is. And it's so, I relate this so much into, I think, the struggles that a lot of people I see have in their own personal strength or their personal fitness journeys is they just blindly follow a program. It's like, oh, this is the program. This is my savior. I'm going to follow this diet. I'm going to work out. This is what it told me to do. And the person in the before and after here did it. So I'm going to do it as well. And think that just by doing the work, that's going to get us there. But in reality, if we don't make it a part of our own idea, if we don't actually understand it, if it's not part of us, then it's just another program. It's just another thing. And it might work in a short period of time. Maybe it would have gotten her system for the 8 or 9 hours or so. But by just getting that little more, it was 3, her urine was the same. Now she's walking around, after a terminal illness. And it's very easy to just think, oh, wow, what a beautiful and miraculous story. It's like, no, there's something to that everybody can learn in there. And I think that's why it's so powerful.
Yeah. And it's not just her story. And this is also why I say do East or do West medicine, like do whatever you want, because, and don't just leave a fret over them, because it's not as much about that medicine. It's how you figure out to align with it. How you choose to align with it. We go back to that choice word.
Yeah. And I love, I want to ask you about some recharging habits beforehand. Was something you mentioned when you were going through your full body, success mastery, which I love right there. The work I've done a bit with mind boxing with Sifu Singh, who is a martial arts master. I've had him on the podcast, and we talked the whole thing about flow and the high performance state. And his whole mind boxing program has the same thing. It's a Tai Chi based movement. And just the moving in space and being aware in your body has such a big impact on your mind. So I can see that of just, putting your hands by your heart, just opening up, just expanding and connecting the physical with the mental is so powerful. So I can see the success of that. With the recharging habits, kind of creating those, I want to ask you about this, how you do create these, because I think the thing that I love about you, and you said so much, is about energy, about increasing energy. And you said it before, we already have all the energy that we need throughout the day in our body. We resort to things like caffeine and stuff like that and thinking we need more, but we actually do these. So are there habits that you can create to get this energy kind of out of your system and unlock it a little bit more?
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that you're saying this, because we can't increase our energy. We can increase our ability to utilize the energy that's already there. If we remember from science class, energy just changes form from one to another, but it's always there, and everything is made of energy. And it's kind of like putting a couple of batteries in a remote control and putting one of them the wrong way. The energy is there. It's just not transmitting. And so what I do, and if it's okay, I'm going to offer a gift too. And, I'll share a little bit of tips now, but I do a whole free webinar called Unlock Unlimited Energy.
Awesome.
The 3 keys to tap into that. And so you just need to go to unlockunlimitedenergy.com to get this, full experience and understanding. And so what we want to do is first just understand like what energy is, how do we tap into it? And so one of the simple things you can do, just so you feel that sense of like, okay, the energy's there, it's just changing form. So now you're moving. And then what type of energy are you creating in between your hands?
It's friction,
heat energy.
Yep.
Yep. And then you separate your hands and you feel tingling. Yeah. So the energy is there. And now you've just done a very simple way to energize your body and tune it into energy. And then if you take your thumb to the middle of each finger and you just press for a moment, then that's another way to tap into that energy. That's a pranic healing technique. One of the things is that what you want to do to feel more energetic, to be motivated, to come up with super conscious solutions to the challenging things that are coming up is what I like to say is to raise your energy. It's to direct it upwards. When you are sad and tired, what is your body position?
It's usually hunched or kind of collapsed in like a turtle.
Yeah. Yeah. And then when you're happy and excited, what is your body position?
Opens up, you present yourself to the world. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is like just that little tip of if we physically do that, right? We're doing all these things to physically shift ourselves. Then we're raising how energetic we feel, how joyful we feel. What we're also doing is tapping into intuition. When scientists are studying people using intuition, it is that prefrontal lobe.
Yeah.
That is being stimulated at that time. And the first thing I want you to do then is you're going to do this with your eyes closed. And you're going to gaze just slightly upwards under the closed eyelids. So that's the energy directing up. And then just take a double inhale and tense all the muscles in your body as you look upwards, as if you're directing all the energy to that point. Double inhale, tense, double exhale, release. Good. Now, you probably, as most people do, held back a little bit when you do that, because we also tend to think that we have a limited supply of energy. And so once I use it up, it's gone, right? But remember, energy is always there. We're just figuring out how to turn those batteries in the correct direction, right? To get that remote control working in the right way. Paramahansa Yogananda, the yoga guru I mentioned, who's helped people feel energetic and joyful around the world, he would say in the pinch of his skin, he could light the entire city of Chicago. I don't think he said that to show off, but to let us know the vast amount of potential of energy that we can tap into. So now what I want you to do for this experiment this time is imagine that the more you put into this exercise, the more you are going to get out of it. So that means I want you to tense to your absolute maximum and then completely release when we're done. So eyes closed, gazing just slightly upwards, double inhale, tense everything, double exhale, release. Do it 2 more times. Inhale, tense to your max, really feel everything vibrate. Exhale, completely release and let it go. 1 more time. Inhale, tense. Okay, if you thought you were at your max before, I want you to go even further because you probably have even more that you can go. And then double exhale, release.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That just raised the stakes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know how quick that was?
Yeah. That's so crazy. Yeah. It's so interesting how we like almost self-censor ourselves in our body of like thinking like, oh, it's like almost like a protective measure first of not getting it. And then going through the second time and almost just knowing like you're allowed to go even more from there. Then all of a sudden that just jolted it into a whole different spectrum from there. That's fast. It's so cool. Like there's these little recharge things that you can do. A lot of times we think like we need to have these huge practices throughout the day. Like we need to spend all this time in meditation or even in exercise or in any routine, when it's like, no, these little recharges that you can do throughout the day could just be a couple minutes. And all of a sudden you are going to feel better in that moment. It's a lot of like, I remember, one of the big books I read last year was James Clear's Atomic Habits. And he talks about just that trigger change of just changing the trigger up. It just takes an instant. And this is kind of along the same path of if you just feel better for a minute or two, that's probably going to move you in the direction that you're hoping to for the rest of the day or whatever, you're trying to pursue throughout the course of your day.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing is that we also change our habits where we don't have to add things that take tons of time. We just shift some of the things that we already do so that it's also more supportive of our health. And those are the things that I lay out in my Embodied Vibrant Health course is just how do we easily in our busy lifestyles in a way save us time and buy us time by making this investment in just the education and then training yourself to have these new habits. And so if you do these energizing exercises, they automatically motivate you to make it easier to change those habits and then see the results of that investment that you made. And you don't have to completely give up, anything that you love unless you're making the decision at one point that you see that, well, actually, I feel a lot better without it. And I'm okay, giving this thing up. But yeah, otherwise I'm not going to force anyone to give up what they love.
Yeah. No, I love that. Oh my gosh, there's like a million other rabbit holes that I want to even dive down into on, but I saw like we're running out of time already. This is going by in like 2 seconds. Avital, this has been amazing. I really appreciate you taking the time and jumping on. I would love to have you on again, because I feel like we're just even scratching the surface of a lot of this stuff here, but I really appreciate you taking the time today. This has been awesome.
I would love to come again. And thank you so much for inviting me. You've had some great questions.
Absolutely. If people want to dive into more of your work, they want to check out your books, Healing Happens, as well as your book, Practice. And what's the best place that we can direct them?
Healing Happens, you can go directly to healinghappensbook.com. But if you go to my website, avitalmiller.com, Avital is spelled A, V for victory, I, T for talented, A-L. Then you'll also find the link to, I just put a tab on there for my books. So you'll find a link to Practice also.
Beautiful. Awesome. This has been incredible. Your story is amazing. And I love the work that you're doing. So till next time, we'll jump on from there, but I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Avital.
Thank you, Michael.
Awesome. Bye guys. Check you on the next one. Peace. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found some great value here. And if you like this episode, please drop a comment and leave us a 5-star rating and review. It does more to build the show than you can imagine. And do not forget to check out and join the Strength Connection Facebook group. In this group, I share the biggest takeaways and lessons from these amazing conversations, as well as training and strength tips for pursuing mastery and fulfillment in life. This group is filled with individuals looking to take full control over their strength, and it's the perfect space to explore new ideas and to share your journey. And you'll also get exclusive access to these Strength Connection Mastery seminars. It's a deep dive into the physical, mental, and spiritual training that you can begin using immediately. So do not wait, go now. Seriously, go. All right, much love to you. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you on the next one.